Hi, I'm Whitney Espick, the CEO of the MIT Alumni Association, and I hope you enjoy this digital production created for alumni and friends like you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nancye Mims. I'm an associate director in the class programs team at MIT in the Alumni Association. We're pleased to bring you this live webinar this afternoon. We're broadcasting live from the MIT Alumni Association. We're here today with Mark Silis. He is a member of the class of 1996, course 6 major. He is currently Associate Vice President of IS&T. We've also got Joe Zhu, Director of Web-Based Services at MIT. And we're also joined by Mark Jacobs, Director of Technical Services at the MIT Alumni Association. He's there with Joe. I'm also pleased to welcome my colleague, Erin Hollis. She is Associate Director in Alumni Outreach in the MIT Alumni Association. Erin manages the Faculty Forum online programming and is here today with her hand firmly on the rudder. All right, so before we get started, I want to remind you that your questions are welcome, but we will answer them at the end. If you're joining us via Zoom, please use the Q&A feature found on your toolbar. For all others listening on YouTube, you may add your questions to the comments field. We will get as many questions in as we can. Also note that today's webinar will be posted on the Cardinal and Gray website, as well as the slides. So let's begin to talk about digital assets. Mark, let's start with you.
Thank you very much. And let's see if I can get my slides up there. Well, appreciate the opportunity to talk with everybody today a little bit about what's a very evolving field, as it turns out. So we're talking about digital assets. And I think first and foremost, what's a digital asset? Well, let's first be honest, there is no formal legal definition at this time of what a digital asset is. If you ask Wikipedia, they'll tell you it's anything that exists in a binary format and comes with a right to use. Data that do not possess that right are not considered technically assets. But I think more generally, when we talk about digital assets, we're really thinking about anything that's stored online in a binary format, any kind of online account owned by an individual, text messages, things of that nature, photos you upload to Flickr, pretty much anything that you've kind of provided from yourself into the digital domain. This is an evolving area, so there may be an evolving definition of this digital asset concept, but I think for the purposes of our conversation today, this is probably, I think, a good starting point. So first and foremost, what happens to digital assets after you're gone? Well, that's a really good question, and I think it varies widely depending on where those digital assets are stored. Just touching on it briefly, Gmail, for example. If you don't use your Gmail account after a period of 9 months, if you've read your Google Mail terms of use, how many people have read the actual 50-page document with a super tiny print, you'll actually see that after 9 months, Google has the right to deactivate or terminate your account. And so if you did nothing, that's actually what would happen today to your Gmail account. Facebook is actually very different. If you took no action, your Facebook account would probably continue to exist into perpetuity. But they also have started to think about, the life cycle management of a Facebook account. And they've started to create provisions so that in the eventual, someone's passing, they have a mechanism for memorializing someone's Facebook account, which would allow them to either terminate the Facebook account, or they could go forward and have it kind of frozen and still available on the Facebook platform as a ongoing memorial to the former Facebook subscriber. LinkedIn, totally different. They have a process via which you can submit a request to have an account deactivated or removed if the person is no longer available. They don't really have that process well defined. They simply provide kind of an email address via which you can contact them. And I think they try to address those requests as best as they can. MIT EFL, which Joe Zhu and Mark Jacobs will touch on a little bit later, has a process where the account remains active for about 90 days after notification of death. And we will talk a little bit more about EFL a little bit later. So I'll leave that to them. So this is a real problem, okay? So all these digital platforms, Facebook, Twitter, MySpace for those people who want to go way back, These are all kind of new things, and all these people jumped on board. I don't think they ever thought about lifecycle management when they were building these platforms, so this is a relatively new concept. And just taking Facebook alone, what you see here are two graphs that show the living Facebook subscribers, and unfortunately those who are no longer with us. And there's two scenarios. The top graph shows what Facebook would look like if Facebook has declining usage over time, but at some point in the not too distant future, the number of folks who are no longer with us on Facebook would exceed the actual number of living subscribers. What you see on the bottom is probably a more reasonable graph, which assumes that Facebook will continue to grow to some level of global saturation. And it's there will still be a point where the number of subscribers who are deceased is going to exceed the living population of Facebook. And that's obviously going to happen much further down the line, but this is a real problem. And this is something that I'd say all the digital companies are thinking about how to handle, what to do. And it's a very evolving landscape. So I think we're very early days, I'd say, in the digital domain trying to tackle these things. So we're trying to touch on a little bit about what's going on today, but this is something I think everybody should continue to monitor, because I think it will continue to see a wide variety of rapid development in the years ahead. So current landscape, just talking about it from digital assets and estate planning. First and foremost, disclaimer, I am not a lawyer. So this is kind of advice and guidance I gathered in preparation for this discussion by talking to folks who are lawyers, documents that are available online and other discussions. So, but first and foremost, for full legal advice for yourselves, you should always consult your attorney. But most current estate planning that folks do does not consider digital assets as part of the discussion. These are relatively new things, and I think things are catching up to the times in the legal area, but this is relatively early days. Most of the laws are really focused on physical property, fiscal matters, but again, digital assets, it's very early days. There is a recognition, I'd say, across the legal landscape, certainly in the United States, that this is an area that needs better definition. And so the Uniform Law Commission, which is kind of an association of attorneys across the United States and its territories, tried to work together to try and better define this area, because it's an area that just needs some better definition. And they introduced the Uniform Fiduciary Access to Digital Assets Act, or if we're just going to call it the UFADAA, in 2014 to try and bridge the gap between the traditional assets and some of the assets in the digital domain. The actual act was amended in 2015. And as of today, almost 40 states have passed some version of the UFADAA law. Just to be clear, for those who may not know, most law with respect to estate planning is done at the state level. There's not a strong amount of federal law in this area, so it's generally handled on a state level basis. And so that's why this is particularly important. But the law particularly extends the traditional power of fiduciary to manage the tangible property, and extends that to the realm of the digital assets. So hopefully trying to provide clarity and provide better positioning for trying to tackle some of these questions that have come up, and put everyone in a better place to try and address them going forward. While it allows you to manage computer files and what we think of as more traditional assets, it does not allow access to your emails or any of your online accounts, regardless of how it's specified. You really need to spell those things out in specific legal terms. If those are things you want folks to have access to, they need to be spelled out explicitly. And that's something obviously that may continue to evolve, but that's the state of things today. And more importantly, I think the again, we touched on those terms of services earlier, those things you click through whenever you sign up for the account. I think very few of us have probably read them in agonizing detail, but they do often have their own terms of service and use. And, most of those companies are based in, California, where the law may not be so clear. So what you see here is kind of the UFADA landscape today, looking at the United States. So you see approximately the 40 states who have passed something or enacted something into legislation. And you see in green, the states that are actually actively considering something this year. And you'll notice states in white haven't quite done anything yet. That includes our fine state here of Massachusetts and the state of California. State of California is particularly interesting because for most of the internet service providers, your Facebooks, your Googles, and things of that nature, they exist in California. And often in those terms of use agreements, it says that any disputes, you agree when you click through them to have them resolved in the state of California. So that I think is important and something to consider. But again, these are well untested issues as of yet legally, not a ton of court rulings, but again, it's early days. So just touching on some of the current legal activities in the area, there's a wide variety of, I think, cases you can find out there. I just picked up on one that's particularly salient to us here in Massachusetts. Went all the way up to the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court and basically said, yes, someone's digital assets, in this case, email, is an asset and can be managed by the estate. And so now the difficulty became, now that we've had this ruling, that's very important and that's good. But the interesting part is, how do you actually enact that? That's a whole different problem. Actually, they've sent it back to a lower court to really figure out how do we reconcile the ruling where they need to provide access to the estate with the actual Yahoo terms of service. And one of the issues, if you read any of the terms of service, it actually tells you in the terms of service that someone who is not you, using your account with your username and your credentials, is a violation of the terms of service, which is completely potentially in conflict with the ruling of the court, the way they made it. So this could potentially be head for further litigation and discussion. It probably may eventually have to be, see the courts in the state of California where Yahoo maintains their business presence, because these are undefined areas in both Massachusetts and California. The real point being is just these are very early days, I think, in particular with the digital assets realm. And I think as time goes on, there'll be rulings that establish precedent and we will get greater clarity. And I think the legislation will get stronger and more specific to help make those things happen. I think the other thing on a technical side is they can tell us that we have to provide access to these assets. I think a lot of these platforms don't have a way of doing that. Facebook and Google are some of the more progressive ones in trying to get ahead of that curve. A lot of platforms don't have any kind of mechanism for doing that for folks. And I think those, again, things will continue to evolve and get better. But it is something that, today, even if someone said, hey, give everyone my email, I don't know if the actual service provider has a good way of doing that. So kind of just best practices for where we are today. I think first and foremost, the best thing you can do is keep a list of all your digital accounts, your Facebook, your Google, your Amazon, your Twitter, your MIT EFL, anything, in the digital domain, your banking account, anything you can kind of think of, just keeping a really good list of those things so that, in the event that someone needs to, figure out how to tackle that problem, they have a good list of how to handle that. Another thing, you may want to consider using a password management platform such as LastPass, Dashlane, 1Password. I don't know how many folks have heard of these things, but I'll touch on a little bit later. But they really give you a way to, in one location, manage all your passwords for pretty much all your online accounts. And if you want to or have to provide those to somebody else at some point in the future, it gives them one place where you can provide them pretty much full access to all your digital identities in one location with one password that you can provide them. As I said earlier, using someone else's credentials to access their account, at least today, to the letter of the rules of the terms of use or the terms of service of many of these platforms is a violation of their terms of use. I don't think anyone has seen that particularly enforced, so I want to be fair about that. But I do think to the letter of the rules and to the letter of the law, that is a violation of the terms of use, at least today. So please keep that in mind. Please be careful, I think, in anything you do with respect to estate planning and digital assets, in particular with credentials or passwords or usernames or anything else you would not want shared. If you make it part of some of the formal documents, those things may be required to be filed in court or with financial entities or otherwise as part of your estate management. And so just think carefully about what you put into which documents because some of those may need to be shared publicly. And so do take some caution when doing that. For some of the platforms that do allow you to name a designate, you may want to think about doing that. So if you're a user of the Facebook platform, they do have the concept of a legacy contact, which would allow you to identify somebody who could manage your Facebook account after you're gone. And Google has the inactive account concept, which would allow you to have someone who is identified to take responsibility for your account after a prescribed period of inactivity on your behalf. Those are things to think about. And again, I think the platforms will continue to evolve. So those are things you should continue to monitor. And you should explicitly identify, I think, to the best of your abilities, what you want to have happen with your digital assets. If you want someone to have access, if you want someone to be able to simply close the account, I think whatever you would like to have happen, you should be as clear as possible. And that will certainly make the situation, I think, easier for you down the road. And I think first, finally, just continue to monitor the situation and consult with your attorney. I think this is an area that's still continuing to evolve, and we'll continue to see a variety of developments. I think it's changed. If you just go back online and Google and search for digital assets and estate planning, it's changed tremendously just in the last 3 years. And I think we'll continue to see that over time. So continue to monitor the situation and definitely consult with your attorney if you need formal legal advice in that area. So just touch a little bit about these features for the platforms that do offer them. With Facebook's memorializing function, you can appoint a contact or legacy contact, as they call it. And this is somebody who will have the ability to write a final post to your Facebook page. They can update your profile picture. They can respond to new friend requests, might be from new family members who want to take part in what the celebration of your life was. And they can request your account be removed if that is so determined. What they can't do is they can't log into your account as you. They can't remove or change anything that you ever posted. They can't read any of your private Facebook messages, and they can't remove any of your friends or make new friend requests on your account's behalf to other parties. And there's additional details available about that on Facebook's help site and discussion forums. But for those who use Facebook and want to pass on some of that, family history and experiences of your life, this is certainly something you should consider taking a look at. The Google Inactive Account Manager is a little bit of a different concept. I'd say Google's much further ahead of the curve on this one, and they probably have a lot more functionality here. But basically, the Google Inactive Account Manager allows you to designate someone by email address who will be contacted in the event that your account ceases to be active. And when I mean ceases to be active, you can pretty much determine what that is. You can pick anywhere as low as 3 months and anywhere as high as 18 months. And in the event that that period of time goes by where you have not used your Google account, and the way they measure that is you haven't logged into Gmail, you haven't logged into the Google Play Store, your Android phone hasn't checked in, things of that nature. They probably have a wider variety of determining what active use is. They probably don't tell us what all those methods are either. But basically, once they've determined your account is no longer in use, they will reach out to this person with an automated message. And if that period goes by, they will then have access to your account. The nice thing about the Google feature is you can actually specify for each platform in the Google suite of platforms, whether it's Gmail or whether it's YouTube or whether it's any of the Google Plus, you can specify exactly which things you want them to have access to in the event that this happens. You can also choose, to have your account automatically deleted. So in the event that your account goes inactive, say you don't want anyone to have access, you can also just choose to have your account be deleted automatically, which would happen 3 months after it goes inactive. So those are things, at least if you're a user of the Google platform, certainly something to take a look at. And finally, I touched on LastPass a little bit. LastPass is just one of a set of password managers. Password managers are basically plugins that you install into your web browser, whether it's Chrome or Firefox or Internet Explorer or anything of that nature, Safari, and it pretty much allows you to manage all your passwords in one place. It secures all of your passwords for all your different accounts on all your different platforms. So it manages your username, manages your password, and you only have to remember your master password in order to access any of your other accounts. And you can also secure it with two-factor authentication for those who want, enhanced security, because it is a, one-stop shop to also exploit all your accounts. So I think you should exercise due caution with that. But it allows you to easily have all your digital accounts and identification in one location. And it makes passing on that information to the estate or to your next of kin or to whatever party you want to a very simplified process. So it's not only a good security practice, but I think from a management standpoint, it can put you in a really good position for trying to tackle these digital assets and passing those on, going forward. So that's kind of what I had to talk about. I think at this point, I'm turning it over to my colleague, Joe Zhu, and his team, and they will talk a little bit about EFL now.
Joe, just 1 second before you start. I just wondered if anyone does have any questions on Mark's material. And I actually have a question, Mark, I'd like to ask you about. We all store a lot of photos these days online, on our computers, in the cloud. Any thoughts about that, how we should prepare our families to be, be able to access all of that really important data?
So there's a couple of ways you can do it. I think it depends on the platform because the features are different. One thing I'll say first, if you take example, iCloud, if you're a iPhone user, or Google Photos, if you're a Google user, one of the nice things they have the ability to do is allow you to share your photos with people in advance. So I have, say for example, I was just at a family wedding in Mexico, and the way I took a tremendous number of photos and videos, and just going within the Apple iPhotos app, I was able to create an album and share it with my family, so they have full access to that today. So you can do that, I think, at any time. A lot of these platforms have sharing functions. I think the other hand, in the event that they would need access to the platforms after, I think, providing the credentials for them to do that, or specifically enumerating in your will or such how you want those things handled, are probably the best things you can do. And I think for something like Google, as we touched on, they have a function for kind of life cycle management. So those photos would be easily passed on to whoever you designate. I think Apple's a little bit further behind in terms of that function, but I expect you would see some similar functionality for them, no doubt, in the future.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Joe, would you like to tell us about EFL?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Let me share my screen.
Not yet. There we go. There we go.
Okay. So hi, everyone. This is Joe Zhu, and I'm the director for the web-based services here at Alumni Association. So EFL, what is EFL? EFL is the email forwarding for life. It's a service that for MIT alumni to stay in touch with your family, friends, and colleagues. EFL is in the form of like in my case it should be like Joe Zhu at alumni.mit.edu, but you can pick any username you want as long as that username has not been picked by someone else. So that's the form of the EFL. And then the next one, EFL is not a real email account. So this a lot of people got confused about that. So we don't save email messages on our service. We are just a middleman. We pass the emails to your real like Gmail account, Yahoo account, those kind of things. So email sent to your EFL address will be forwarded along to any email address. Actually, it's up to 5. You can have up to 5 forwarding address, and you can set it up in Infinite Connection. So this is, the next one is EFL is also your login username for Infinite Connection. So like if you go to alum.mit.edu, can you see this screen? If you go to the website, you will see, there's a login button there, and then you can log in there, and then there's a My Account, and you can specify your forwarding address in My Account. So try to go to there if you haven't done so yet. So this is EFL. Now the next question, who is eligible for EFL? So EFL is exclusively for MIT alumni. And then you may ask, what is MIT alumni? So surprisingly, no, it's not that clear cut. So the definition of MIT alumni is like a person who has received a degree from MIT. So that one, I don't think we have any problems. But the next one is, a person who has been registered as student in a degree granting program at MIT. So basically you are admitted by MIT as a student, and then you have to at least finish 1 term if you are an undergraduate. But if you are graduate students, you have to finish at least 2 terms. So if you finish 2 terms as a graduate student, then you will be granted the alumni status. So this is the definition of the MIT alumni. And then the next one is the postdocs, associate members, like joint programs, spouses, friends, they are not eligible for EFL. Okay. EFL after death. So EFL will remain active for 90 days after we receive death notification. What does that mean is that sometimes, a spouse will call us saying that, hey, an alum passed away, or sometimes we will get the notification from a friend, And then what we do is like, we are going to talk to the obituary to make sure, to confirm the death of an alum. And then the process will start that we will send out a deactivation notification, to the EFL address. So a family member, a son, a daughter, a spouse might be able to pick that up and take care of the EFL accounts. And then after 90 days, the EFL account will be deactivated and it will no longer forward email messages. So 3 months, 90 days. And then when EFL is deactivated, the Infinite Connection, the website I just showed you guys, the alum.mit.edu, that website login is also disabled. So you have 90 days, after we receive the death notification. So sometimes if we get it the next day, then it will start the next day. And sometimes we get the death notification after 3 months, and then it will start, after 3 months. So that's the 90-day period after we receive the death notification. So I think that's all I have for the EFL. And if you have, more questions on the digital assets, you can, there are a few URLs that you can use and to get more of it. And the last one is for the EFL. So Nancye, back to you.
Well, thank you both very much. So far, we have not received any questions from the listeners. We're still, we'll be on the line for another few minutes. If anyone has a question, please submit them now. I guess, I'm wondering if either of you want to, if there's anything else that either of you would like to address at this time, anything that you think we may have forgotten to touch on.
Okay, so I just got one question about why is EFL only 90 days?
Okay.
So, I think, the policy that we put in place so far works very well. And we have all the positive, feedbacks from son, daughters, and wives, husbands, so we don't see any problem with those 90 days. I think the key here is that when you handle those digital assets, EFL, you have to communicate effectively to your relatives, your son, daughters, wives, husbands, so let them know the policy and let them know your password. And also, as Mark says, maybe handle all those password in a central repository, like the LastPass, and that way the process will be very smooth.
Right.
So.
Let me also just jump in here with something. If you're an alum and you think your spouse would want to continue to be involved with MIT after your death, then please make sure that we have your spouse's email. We do have a very active surviving spouses group. It's called the Emma Rogers Society, and it's great for us if we do have contact information. Okay, well, that concludes the program for today. As I did say, this was recorded on YouTube. It's also will be up on the Cardinal and Gray Society website. It'll probably also be up on the Emma Rogers Society news site, website, I should say. So I want to thank all the panelists and everyone here from MIT and all of the 60+ individuals who joined us today for this webinar. Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us. And for more information on how to connect with the MIT Alumni Association, please visit our website.